Hello everyone, hope you all are doing well. Welcome to Diplomat's Desk. I am your host Meet Shah. Today I want you to step into a different role. For the next few minutes, you are not just a viewer, you are an Indian diplomat and economist posted in West Asia. Your phone is buzzing with encrypted messages, ceasefire talks are on, aid convoys are stuck at borders, Indian companies are bidding for reconstruction projects. Washington, Tel Aviv, Riyadh, Tehran, Cairo, everyone is calling. And New Delhi is asking you one big question. How can India turn this fragile ceasefire and conflict scarred landscape into a platform for peace, reconstruction, and strategic influence without losing its balance? That's the journey we are going on today. So, as a diplomat, the first thing you learn is the West Asia is not far away. It is India's extended neighborhood. Why does this region matter so much? First, energy security. India still imports a large share of its crude oil and gas from the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, UAE, and others. Without stable energy flows from West Asia, India's growth story becomes vulnerable. Second, diaspora and remittances. Around 9 million Indians live in GCC countries like UAE, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, roughly two-thirds of all NRIs. They send back billions of dollars in remittances every year. Overall, remittances hit about $135 billion in FY 2024-25, a record that significantly supports India's economy. Between 2020 and mid 2025, more than 1.6 million lower income Indian workers migrated to 14 countries, mainly in the Gulf, powered by construction booms like Saudi's Vision 2030 project. Third, trade and connectivity. With the UAE alone, India's trade is around 80 plus billion-dollar mark. With Saudi Arabia, tens of billions more. These are not just numbers, they are jobs, factories, and ports back home. Fourth, security and counterterrorism. West Asia conflicts spill over into global terrorism, radicalization, and maritime security in the Arabian Sea and the Indian Ocean. Preventing state collapse and chaos in this region is directly linked to India's internal security. As a diplomat, every cable you send about West Asia is not just about foreign policy, it's about jobs in Kerala, UP, fuel prices in Mumbai, and security in Kashmir and the Indian Ocean. So, historically, if we talk about India walked a careful tightrope. Support for the Palestinian cause rooted in anti-colonial solidarity, growing strategic and defense ties with Israel after 1990s, deep energy interdependence with Saudi Arabia and the Gulf, and long-standing civilizational ties with Iran. In recent years, this posture has evolved into what many analysts call a multi-aligned West Asia policy, not choosing one camp but engaging with all sides to maximize space for India's interest and for regional stability. Under the Link West approach, India's presence has shifted from marginal to strategic. High level summits with UAE, Saudi Arabia, Israel, Iran, defense and maritime cooperation agreements, big focus on connectivity projects like IMEC and Chabhar. But over the last 2 years, especially after the Gaza war and ceasefire deal, something else has changed. India is increasingly positioning itself not just as a trading partner but as a stakeholder in peace building and reconstruction. Let's see how. Imagine you are in New York representing India at the United Nations. The Gaza conflict has devastated infrastructure, hospitals, schools. United Nations and aid groups warns that humanitarian operations in Gaza are on the brink of collapse because of restrictions and bureaucratic obstacles. What has India done and said publicly? First, consistent message ceasefire hostages two-state solutions. India has repeatedly called for the release of all hostages and immediate ceasefire and solution based on two-state Israel and Palestine living side by side in peace. At the United Nations, India's envoy has stressed that diplomacy and dialogue are the only sustainable path to the peace and that humanitarian aid must remain apolitical. Second, participation in the Sharm el Sheikh Gaza Peace Summit to 2025. In October 2025, India sent Union Minister Kirti Vardhan Singh to the Sharm el Sheikh Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt. Leaders from around 20 countries met to ensure that the ceasefire holds, secure aid flows to Gaza, and discuss reconstruction frameworks. For you, as a diplomat, this means India is physically present at the table where post war architecture is being discussed, not just issuing statements from afar. Third, strategic dialogue with Egypt. Soon after India and Egypt held their first strategic dialogue in New Delhi, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar praised Egypt's leadership in the Gaza peace process, signaling that India sees Cairo as a key partner in managing the conflict and eventual reconstruction. Fourth, financial and developmental support to Palestine. Over the last 11 years, India's development assistance to Palestine has reached around $80 million, nearly double what it contributed in the previous 65 years. Despite political controversies around UNRWA, India has continued to support Palestinian refugees via the agency and through bilateral aid. Fifth, the reconstruction debate: should India lead? Indian analysts and policy commentators have argued that if the ceasefire in Gaza holds, India should not lag behind on reconstruction, especially in areas where Indian companies have strong capabilities: housing, roads, power, and digital infrastructures. Now, I want you to think like both diplomat and economist. If India takes a leading role in rebuilding Gaza, hospitals, school, power grids, what does it gain? What does it risk? We'll come to that in a moment. First, take India's West Asia engagement is not limited to Gaza. Over the last decade, India has quietly built a record of humanitarian assistance and rescue operations in the region. Operations like Rahat in Yemen and most recent missions such as Operation Sindhu in Iran and Israel have evacuated thousands of Indian nationals from conflict zones. India has provided food and medical aid to Yemen, donated to the United Nations Yemen Humanitarian Fund, and supplied vaccines under Vaccine Maitri. A recent analysis of India's humanitarian initiative in the Gulf, especially in Yemen and Iraq, notes that these efforts reflect a broader foreign policy marked by pragmatic realism and soft power, positioning India as a responsible, responsive actor rather than a military power. Meanwhile, in Syria, after the ouster of Bashar al Assad and the formation of new authorities in Damascus, European countries like Italy have begun committing funds for reconstruction and infrastructure, taking openly for transition support and business forums for rebuilding. As a diplomat, you can see the pattern. Reconstruction is not just a charity, it's a strategic entry point into shaping the future political and economic order in West Asia. If India wants to be taken seriously as a global power, it controls it out of this phase. Now let's shift fully into your economist hat. In 2023, India and its partners announced the India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor, a multimodal trade route linking Indian ports to the Gulf and onward to Europe, with US and EU backing. Analysts describe IMEC as a potential corridor for peace and stability, using trade, logistics, and interdependence to dampen conflict incentives, a counterweight to China's Belt and Road Initiative, providing alternative connectivity and reducing over-dependence on any single route. External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has argued that the very volatility of West Asia actually strengthens the case for IMEC because it diversifies risk, spreads the benefits of connectivity, and gives regional players a stake in stability. From a reconstruction angle, this means rebuilding ports, logistic hubs, rail links, energy pipelines, and digital cables in West Asia does not just benefit locals, it makes India's trade routes shorter, safer, and cheaper. Peace and prosperity in Gaza, Syria, Yemen, or Iraq are no longer only moral goals. They are embedded in the design of corridors like IMEC. As a diplomat, economist, you start seeing peace as infrastructure. Every power plant rebuilt in Gaza, every logistic park in the Gulf, every modernized port in Eastern Mediterranean can either lock in peace or, if mismanaged, deepen inequality and resentment. Now, who gains, who loses? Stakeholders. So let's walk through the main stakeholders as if you are writing a confidential policy note to New Delhi. First, ordinary Palestinian in Gaza. Potential gains: faster rebuilding of hospitals, school, basic infrastructures. If India and others step in with transparent, well-run projects, Indian development style focus on affordable housing, public health, digital inclusions could create visible people-centric benefits. What are the risks here? If reconstruction contracts are heavily politicized or dominated by a few regional powers, Palestinians might see India as aligned with one camp. Humanitarian access is already under strain. UN and NGOs warn they may be forced to shut operations due to restrictive registration and blockages. Without open access, any Indian project may be stuck on paper. Second, Syrian, Yemenis, and Iraqis. These populations have endured years of war. For them, India's role is more gradual. In Yemen, India's aid and evacuation missions have created goodwill, scholarships, and medical visas, deepen people to people ties. In post war Syria, as European funding starts flowing for reconstruction, India could act as a civilian partner, contributing contractors, engineering firms, and training rather than boots on the ground. Three, Indian diaspora in the Gulf. For millions of Indian workers in Gulf states, stability and economic growth in the region means more jobs and safer conditions. The constructions boom linked to mega projects and possible reconstruction drives will likely continue to demand Indian labor. But incidents like tragic Kuwait labor camp fire in 2024, where 45 Indian workers died, remind us how fragile their situation is and why India's diplomacy must include labor protections, housing standards, and legal aid. Fourth, Indian companies and the economy. If India seriously positions itself for reconstruction contracts, the potential benefits include export orders for infrastructure, construction, power equipment, IT services, healthcare, and education. Long-term services contracts that locks in revenues for Indian firms while building India's reputation as a development partner, strengthening the rupee through higher remittances and project earnings, supporting India's macroeconomic stability. But there are risks. Delayed payments in fragile states, political instability, or sanctions regime could make some projects financially risky. India must avoid the perception of being a purely commercial actor profiting from war-torn societies. Fifth, regional powers Israel, Gulf states, Iran, and Egypt. From their perspective, an India that is economically significant but not militarily threatening can be a welcome partner. For the Gulf monarchies, India offers market, manpower, defense cooperation, and partner in de-risking supply chains. For Israel, India is already a key defense and tech partner. Its involvement in reconstruction could help moderate hardline tendencies if managed carefully. For Iran, projects like Jabbar and wider connectivity keep channels open despite Western pressure. However, if India is seen as tilting too clearly towards one axis, say US, Israel, Gulf versus Iran, or vice versa, the space for multi alignment could shrink. Now, let's brutally be honest as you would be in internal memo. First, overstretching commitments, taking on visible roles in Gaza, Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and IMEC simultaneously risks spreading diplomatic and financial resources thin. India still has a pressing needs at home. Every rupee sent abroad invites domestic scrutiny. Great power competition. The US, Europe, China, Russia all are competing to shape West Asia's future. IMEC itself is partially seen as geopolitical response to China's Belt and Road. India must ensure it does not become a just junior partner in someone else's game. Three, domestic political narratives. Any visible step in Gaza or Israel can be read through domestic political lenses. Inside India, diplomat must maintain a clear narrative. India is pro-peace, pro-development, pro-people, and not pro-any one-side hardliners. Fourth, humanitarian credibility versus real politic. At the UN, India stresses humanitarian principles and a two-state solution. On the ground, it must engage with governments and actors who may not fully share those values. Managing this gap without hypocrisy is an ongoing challenge. Despite this dilemma, look at the pattern emerging. India has scaled up humanitarian assistance to Palestine and other conflict-hit countries. It has used diplomacy at summits like Sharm el-Sheikh, strategic dialogues with Egypt, and statements at the United Nations to position itself as a voice of moderation, calling for ceasefire, dialogue, and reconstruction. Through IMEC and other connectivity projects, it is quietly inserting itself into the economic wiring of West Asia, making peace and prosperity in the region critical to India's own growth. As a diplomat and economist, you can summarize India's approach in three words: stability, connectivity, and credibility. Why stability? Because chaos in West Asia hurts India directly. Connectivity because trade corridors turn peace from an abstract slogan into material benefit. Credibility because taking real risks, sending aid, attending tough summits, taking nuanced position build trust. Now, imagine you are writing a 2030 scenario note to the foreign secretary. Ask yourself, in the best case scenario, what does West Asia look like for India? A relatively stable Gaza with functioning infrastructure where Indian hospitals, schools, and tech projects have Indian flags on them. A recovering Syria where Indian firms are part of rebuilding power and transport networks. A Yemen where conflict has cooled and India is known for its early humanitarian support and educational ties. A fully operational IMEC corridor making Indian ports some of the busiest nodes in Eurasian trade. In the worst case scenario, ceasefire repeatedly collapse, reconstruction money is misused or blocked, aid agencies pull out due to restrictions, Gaza remains in ruins and resentment deepens, great power competition turns West Asia into a multipolar battlefield. Trade routes are weaponized again. India is forced into reactive crisis management instead of proactive peace building. Your job is as this imagined diplomat economist is to nudge reality away from the worst case and closer to the best case. And that is exactly what India is trying to do right now, stepping up diplomacy, pushing for peace, and exploring reconstruction carefully but decisively. So, the headline India steps up diplomacy in West Asia with focus on reconstruction and peace is not just a line in the newspaper, it's a sign of larger shift from just buying oil to helping rebuild societies, from cautiously balancing rivalries to shaping regional outcomes, from being seen as a regional power to behaving like a responsible global player. As viewers and as citizens, we need to ask, are we ready for India to take on this bigger role with all its opportunities and responsibilities? If you were really sitting in that embassy drafting those cables, what should you advise New Delhi to do next? Invest more in Gaza reconstructions, push harder for IMEC and the other connectivity projects, prioritize labor rights for Indians in the Gulf, or hold back and focus more on domestic development first? Tell me in the comments. If you were India's ambassador in the West Asia for one day, what would be your first decisions? In this video, help you to see the region through a diplomat's eyes. Do like, share, and subscribe. Jai Hind, and see you in the next one.